Prince Andrew's shocking behavior is finally exposed by those who knew him best. Former girlfriends and insiders reveal a lifetime of entitlement, arrogance, and reckless actions that the royal family tried to hide. From explosive tempers to cruel pranks, the truth about Andrew is more disturbing than anyone imagined. Don't miss a single detail. Like, share, and subscribe now for continuous coverage as we uncover every scandal, every secret, and every moment the Duke tried to hide from the world. For decades, Prince Andrew's public image was a mix of royal privilege and carefully curated appearances. To the outside world, he was a royal spare, a man seemingly protected by birthright, shielded from scrutiny by wealth, connections, and tradition. But recent revelations have begun to dismantle that facade, and none more striking than the blunt and unfiltered remarks of Susanna Constantine. A former girlfriend of David Armstrong Jones, and someone who moved in Andrew's social circles, Constantine has now stepped forward to describe the men she witnessed up close, a man she calls ignorant, entitled, and convinced the world owes him a favor. Her words are more than anecdotal gossip, they carry the weight of lived experience, of someone who saw firsthand the private temperament that decades of public scrutiny have only hinted at. Her comments have ignited renewed attention because they reinforce long-standing rumors about Andrew's behavior, offering evidence that his entitlement and immaturity were not isolated incidents but consistent traits. For the first time in years, voices from within his own sphere are publicly confirming what insiders and biographers have long suggested. This is more than a scandalous anecdote. It is a fresh chapter in Andrew's long-running downfall, one that forces the public and the palace alike to confront truths that have long been whispered in private. The man shielded for decades is now under the spotlight of those who witnessed him without filters. Susanna Constantine's assessment of Prince Andrew was swift, sharp, and unflinching. On the podcast Spooning with Mark Wogan, when asked if Andrew was misunderstood, her answer left no room for doubt. He is ignorant, entitled, and behaves as if the world owes him a favor. She described a man who consistently places his own desires above those of anyone around him, who lashes out at minor inconveniences, and who treats rules as optional. Constantine did not merely criticize his social etiquette, she painted a portrait of a person whose sense of superiority and self-importance runs deep, shaping the way he interacts with everyone, from staff to family members. Her perspective matters precisely because she was part of the inner circle, dating within the royal sphere for 6 years and witnessing firsthand how Andrew behaved in private. She contrasted him with other royals. While the Queen was gracious and polite, and even Prince Philip could be terse but controlled, Andrew was volatile, abusive, and prone to explosive outbursts. Her observations were not colored by resentment or sensationalism, they came from someone who saw both the mundane and extraordinary facets of his life, from casual conversations to high-pressure social events. Constantine's verdict reinforces a broader pattern of behavior, underscoring that Andrew's entitlement is not a matter of perception but of repeated, documented conduct that spans decades. Multiple witnesses and staff who worked around Prince Andrew paint a strikingly consistent picture, a man who could fly into rages over the smallest inconveniences, often lashing out at anyone nearby. Stories recount him shouting through car windows, calling staff buffoons for minor imperfections. These were not rare incidents but recurring behavior that left employees walking on eggshells and guests shocked. Andrew's temper, described as explosive and unpredictable, contrasted sharply with other members of the royal family. Prince Philip, though known for his occasional sharp words, maintained a sense of discipline and respect. The late Queen Elizabeth, while exacting, combined her authority with courtesy and restraint. Andrew, by comparison, displayed little awareness of the impact of his actions, offering no apologies or signs of self-reflection. Staff accounts consistently emphasize a lifelong pattern of behavior, anger that erupted without provocation, a refusal to acknowledge responsibility, and a sense that he was above consequence. These outbursts were not limited to private moments, they spilled into social events, travel, and public-facing duties, signaling that the problem was deep-seated, not circumstantial. Observers repeatedly noted that his behavior was performative, intended to assert dominance and demand attention, rather than address real grievances. Over time, this pattern built a reputation of volatility that would echo through decades, foreshadowing later public scandals and reinforcing the perception of a man incapable of controlling his impulses or respecting boundaries. One of the most striking aspects of Andrew's life is the sense of entitlement that extends beyond attitude into tangible advantages. Susanna Constantine openly questioned how Andrew ever earned his helicopter license, emphasizing the rigorous standards required, especially for someone serving in the Royal Navy. For most, passing such a program demands discipline, skill, and intense scrutiny. Yet Andrew seemed to bypass obstacles others could not, benefiting from doors that opened automatically due to his name rather than ability. This incident reflects a broader pattern in which privilege became a substitute for merit. His access to opportunities, travel, and positions of authority appeared unearned, fueling a belief that rules did not apply to him. This sense of automatic entitlement did more than secure him privileges, it shaped his behavior. Andrew's belief that the world owed him favors, combined with a lack of accountability, created an environment where recklessness could thrive. Whether in social situations, professional settings, or later controversial encounters, this mindset allowed him to act without concern for consequences. Privilege without merit became a dangerous mix, producing a man insulated from normal checks, whose decisions increasingly carried risk both for himself and for the monarchy. The helicopter license anecdote is emblematic of decades in which inherited status replaced earned respect, reinforcing the lifelong narrative of entitlement that would ultimately define Andrew's public downfall. Susanna Constantine offered a rare note of sympathy for Andrew, acknowledging the pressures of growing up as a royal spare. Born into immense wealth and privilege, Andrew was given status, access, and opportunity from birth, but little real purpose. Constantine noted that for someone in his position, personal identity is largely predetermined. Psychological studies of royals and heirs to high-profile families suggest that growing up without autonomy or a defined role can foster feelings of frustration, insecurity, or disconnection. Being a spare is unique, you exist to serve the institution, often without the authority or recognition afforded to the heir. Yet Constantine was clear, context does not excuse behavior. While upbringing may explain some patterns, it cannot justify arrogance, entitlement, or abusive conduct. Andrew's repeated outbursts, disregard for others, and willingness to exploit his privilege were choices, not inevitabilities. The sense of responsibility, or lack thereof, was shaped by his decisions, not merely his circumstances. In other words, hardship or lack of purpose might explain why someone feels frustrated, but it cannot validate humiliating staff, endangering reputations, or exploiting social situations for personal amusement. This section reinforces a recurring theme: understanding Andrew's upbringing adds nuance but does not excuse misconduct. Context explains the pressures he faced as a royal spare, but it does not mitigate the pattern of immaturity, entitlement, and arrogance that would define his life and public downfall. One of the most striking contradictions in Andrew's life is found in his daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Both Susanna Constantine and Mark Wogan noted how grounded, sensible, and kind the girls appear, qualities that sharply contrast with the arrogance, entitlement, and immaturity so often attributed to their father. Observers are struck by how well-adjusted and polite the sisters are, often described as relatable, charming, and responsible, despite growing up under the intense scrutiny and complicated dynamics of the royal household. Their decency raises questions about inheritance versus environment, showing that upbringing alone does not dictate behavior. The contrast highlights a deeper paradox. Andrew's reputation has been defined by impulsivity, disregard for consequences, and a consistent pattern of entitlement, yet his daughters display none of the toxic traits that dominate his own public image. It suggests that even in the context of wealth, status, and family dysfunction, moral character and empathy can emerge independently. For many observers, the daughters serve as a testament to the complexity of human behavior, two remarkable young women, raised by parents whose public reputations are mired in controversy, scandals, and poor judgment. This paradox forces reflection on Andrew's failures not only as a royal but as a father and individual, showing that while privilege may facilitate opportunity, it does not guarantee virtue. Andrew's reputation within the royal family has long been fraught with tension and alienation. As Constantine observed, even close family members have grown wary of him, with Charles allegedly taking on the promise of caring for Andrew but no real affection or trust existing beyond that obligation. Insiders consistently describe a man who accumulated enemies throughout his rise, frustrating both peers and elders with his impulsivity, entitlement, and repeated lapses in judgment. His relationships within the palace are not casual misunderstandings but the product of decades of behavior that alienated colleagues and family alike. This isolation reflects more than personality clashes, it represents a sustained failure to navigate the structures and expectations of the monarchy. Unlike other royals, Andrew struggled to earn genuine loyalty or respect. His reliance on inherited status rather than earned authority contributed to resentment. Long-standing frustration over his antics, from temper outbursts to inappropriate social behavior, has only compounded the perception that he is unreliable and difficult to manage. Today, his standing within the royal family mirrors his public fall, estranged, sidelined, and largely unsupported. Andrew's isolation is not a recent development but the cumulative consequence of decades of missteps, a cautionary portrait of a royal whose personal flaws created lasting professional and familial fractures. Decades before Prince Andrew's scandals became global headlines, a woman named Vicky Hodge crossed paths with him in Barbados in 1983. A glamorous actress and model, Hodge was older, more worldly, and immediately perceptive. From the outset, she noticed traits that would later define Andrew's public persona: immature, self-indulgent jokes he thought were clever, a craving for attention, impulsive behavior, and a general disregard for social boundaries. Her early observations highlighted a young man who believed charm alone could carry him, someone emotionally immature and convinced of his own magnetism. Hodge's 10-day romance with Andrew was brief but revealing. She recognized that he was headstrong and rarely listened to advice unless it suited him. She warned that he needed someone strong to prevent escapades that would embarrass both himself and the monarchy, a statement that now reads almost prophetically. Her insights foreshadowed decades of behavior, reckless social conduct, controversial relationships, and eventual involvement in the Epstein scandal. The patterns she noted, impulsivity, arrogance, and disregard for consequences, culminated in public disasters like the infamous BBC interview and the stripping of his titles. Hodge's observations from 1983 confirm that Andrew's entitlement and immaturity were neither sudden nor circumstantial, they were lifelong traits, deeply embedded long before the headlines, illustrating that the seeds of his eventual downfall were evident to those closest to him even in his youth. Andrew's private parties became infamous among those who attended them, not for elegance or charm, but for displays of juvenile cruelty. Multiple witnesses describe incidents that are shocking even by royal standards: creeping up behind women to unzip dresses, shoving guests' faces into plates of food, and using humiliation as entertainment. The goal was never subtle humor, it was attention, shock, and dominance. These repeated patterns highlight a man who thrived on testing boundaries, particularly around young women who were unlikely to challenge him. Accounts emphasize that Andrew's behavior was consistently crude, juvenile, and performative. He never appeared embarrassed, remorseful, or aware of the inappropriateness of his actions. Staff and attendees noted that his conduct was a show, designed to assert control and amuse himself, often at the expense of others' dignity. These anecdotes underline the persistence of traits first observed in his youth: entitlement, a craving for attention, immaturity, and disregard for consequences. Far from being isolated incidents, these pranks and lewd jokes are part of a larger, decades-long pattern that ties directly to his later scandals. They reinforce the narrative of a man who consistently prioritized self-interest and spectacle over respect, empathy, or personal accountability, leaving a trail of humiliation and discomfort in every social circle he entered.